Okay, it's time for us to start building our landscape. So let's look at our landscape sculpting tools. So what we'll do is here at the top menu, these are our different modes that we're in while we work in our project. And we're in editing mode. Currently, we want to switch to this active landscaping mode. Okay, so after doing so, we can see that we have this green grid. Let's use our WASD keys and right mouse button here to kind of zoom out. When we start building really large landscapes like this, just using the left mouse button to get around can get pretty tricky. So strongly recommend, again, just like we learned in one of the first lectures, that you're holding the right mouse button and using the WASD keys to get around. And again, when you're in this mode and you're holding that right mouse button, you can spin your middle mouse wheel up or down to control how fast you move around. It's just going to help you significantly when you have really large landscapes like this. We can hit G to get rid of all that other stuff. Now we just have our guy here. So this is looking very, very large. So each one of these squares is made up of what's called a landscape component. You can see down here that we have a total of 64. Whoa. Undo that. A total of 64 components. That's an 8x8 grid, right? You can tell that these are pretty large in terms of size, seeing that our guy right here is pretty small. We just don't need this much area. I think we could probably get away with maybe a 6x6 would be a little bit of a better fit. So let's do a 6x6. All right, so let's start looking at these sculpting tools. So what we'll want to do now is, now that we've identified how big we want our landscape to be, we're going to hit this create button. All right, and now we can start sculpting. It's automatically moved us from the Manage tab of Landscape to the Sculpting tab. So we've got a lot of different tools we can use to start sculpting here. And we'll go through most of these tools, not all of them. Some of these are a little more advanced, but I think you'll have a pretty good idea of how to build landscapes after we go through these. So first thing is we are in the Sculpt Height Data setting, and this is about as basic as building a terrain is in building height or building depth down into the landscape. So let's make our brush a little bit bigger right over here, maybe even a tiny bit bigger. And if I start holding down the left mouse button while I drag around, I'm going to start building some terrain. Okay. Build some terrain over here. All right, so that's what that does. If I hold Shift while holding the left mouse button, it's going to build down into the mesh. So now we've built maybe this little man-made lake or whatever that might be. Okay, so holding the left mouse button down builds the terrain. And again, if you just hold it in one area while you hold it, it's going to just keep building on top of itself. So you'll want to make sure that you're using nice strokes while holding that left mouse button down. All right, so that's sculpting. Smooth, you can run on top of a sculpted surface just a second, and you'll be able to see how it's smoothing that out. So if I come over here and I hold down the left mouse button, notice how it smooths that out. It smooths that. Now we're not getting as much definition as much of those top peaks. It's making it much, much smoother. Okay. The flatten is similar, except that it really flattens out everything on top, maybe to create like a plateau. For example, if I use the flatten tool and I hold the left mouse button, now it's really flattening out the top. In fact, that's way too much of a brush size. Let's do it smaller. There we go. Okay. And we can also take our strength down if it's just too much. Like that. Also, you'll notice how we have these nice slopes, and that's based on this. If I go back to Sculpt, I can show you. That's based on this brush fall off, how those slopes are created. And to give you an example, if I make this brush fairly large, but I make our brush fall off much larger as well, we're going to be getting a lot more of that fall off on the sides of our sculpt mesh here. Okay. So that's that fall off here. So I'm going to take this back up a little bit, make this fall off smaller. And we have that brush fall off on a lot of these tools, by the way. So ramp, if I just wanted a very level ramp from top of this peak down to the ground, and then go and add ramp. And that just gradually adds some geometry between those 2 points. You'll see if I go back to sculpt. Now we kind of have this ramp effect down there. So that's what the ramp does. Erosion's just trying to mimic what happens in actuality when, here I'll draw some erosion around here. When you start to have erosion of dirt and rocks falling off of your peaks, your mountain peaks here. So you'll notice it just kind of went inside, and that's probably because our brush is just way too big. Let's try to add some. Now we're just adding some erosion into the mountain here. Okay. Now, hydro is very similar to erosion, but it's going to give you a lot more noise as if water had eroded away the landscape. So you'll see a little bit harder to see. You can kind of see it down in here. It's putting some details in. It's calculating based on water kind of falling down and accumulating down in the bottom. If I hold it, you'll see that we're getting like this water hole here. Let's see if we can do that more. Oh, see, now we got water coming down here. Now it's dropping down here. It's trying to mimic how water would flow down the sides of this mountain, which is pretty cool. Noise is a good one. Now, if your brush is really, really large, you're going to get some pretty crazy effects. For example, you got some nice peaks. So if you're building like Mordor, whoa, look at that one. Then you're going to get some crazy stuff going on, right? If you just hold that down just even for a few seconds, it really starts to get some stuff. But noise is excellent for maybe adding some additional detail to the top of our mountain peaks here. So if I take this way smaller, I just kind of start to do that. See, we're getting some sharper peaks in here. That's cool. That's useful. Maybe we even drop our fall off a little bit. We can get that, and we can get some extra noise and peaks going on in here. All right, so that's noise. We're not going to touch on retop right now, visibility. We can look at mirror. So mirror will take, get that mirror. So mirror, you position your mirror element anywhere you want on your landscape. And then it's going to mirror this side. Is showing you how it's going to mirror. It's going to mirror everything on this side of the green box to the other side. So if I apply, notice how everything that's over here is now a mirror image. There we go. Everything over here is now a mirror image on the other side. So that's what the mirror plane does. Okay, and then you have copy. This is, again, another more advanced gizmo. Then we don't really need to talk about this one right now. It just allows you to copy data in a gizmo, and then you can move the gizmo and paste and draw your copy of your terrain somewhere else. All right, so that is the sculpting tools. Now, we are not going to just use sculpting tools to get started. We are going to sculpt and use the painting tools simultaneously to build some really compelling and beautiful cliff-like structures that have the proper paint and materials on top of them as they're being built. And we're going to see how that works in the next lecture.